Kenma Kozume is one of the smartest volleyball players of his generation. He also has no stamina. During a national tournament game, one of the opposing teams that Kenma played against created a plan that's entire purpose was to break Kenma down by making him run around. And it almost worked. Kenma was not a great athlete, he was very socially awkward, and he was lazy. Or at least outwardly he appeared to be, because Kenma in actuality was quoted by the team captain and his best friend Kuro as quote, the heart and brain of his team. And it was actually true. Kenma was actually very competitive, he was responsible for creating and adapting amazing game plans, and was someone that cared very deeply for his friends, even though he didn't overtly show it. And initially, while Kenma did not have fun while playing volleyball games, he was able to finally meet a rival that made him see the fun in it. But how does someone who didn't even have fun playing volleyball get into volleyball? Well, it all started when Kenma was a child. When Kenma was a kid, he was very shy and unable to make friends on his own. Kenma suffered from social anxiety, did his best to seem invisible, and growing up only had one friend, and that was because their parents forced him to hang out. This friend was Kenma's next door neighbor and eventual best friend Kuro. When Kuro was first seen in Haikyuu, he was very charismatic, was the team captain of his volleyball team, and did not seem to have a shy bone in his body. However, surprisingly, when he was young, he was even shyer than Kenma. Kuro's family had moved to Kenma's neighborhood, and Kuro had a hard time adjusting to his new environment. Kuro was silent, afraid to talk to anyone new, and initially even Kenma spoke more than him. When Kenma and Kuro first met, the only reason that they even started hanging out was because their parents forced them to. When their parents would leave to run errands or go to work, they made them hang out with each other, thinking according to Kenma that they would get along just because they were around the same age. During these meetups, they would often just stand around in awkward silence, not really knowing what to do, until Kenma broke the silence by offering to play some video games. This quickly became their go-to option when they met up, but after playing games all the time, Kenma out of consideration for Kuro asked if he wanted to try something new, and Kuro excitedly brought out a volleyball. Kuro before he had moved had been part of a volleyball team and had some experience playing, so he started to teach Kenma volleyball. They quickly went to play outside and they started to bond over volleyball, and Kenma even started to gain more respect for Kuro. And one of these moments was when Kenma started to get red dots on his forearms from passing the volleyball. He asked Kuro about the dots, but Kuro said not to worry about it and it was just quote, a little internal bleeding. Through this volleyball session, Kuro was able to start breaking out of his shell, and he completely broke out of it when Kenma agreed to go with him to volleyball camp. Because of his shyness, Kuro did not want to go to an unfamiliar place by himself, but because Kenma went with him, Kuro was able to go and play the game he loved. Through that camp, Kuro was able to make a lot of friends, change his personality, and get even deeper into volleyball. Now while Kuro changed a lot to the volleyball, Kenma was not as into it as he was and was content to stay the same. However, this didn't change the way Kuro saw Kenma. One day when Kuro was going out to play soccer with his friends, Kenma's dad asked Kuro if he could take Kenma with them. However, Kuro, knowing that Kenma was not at all interested, told Kenma's dad that he didn't want to force Kenma to do something he 100% did not want to do. However, he then reassured Kenma's dad saying that while Kenma appeared lazy, he was not a slacker, and when he was into something, he would do it with 100% effort. And this was actually true. For example, when Kenma was growing up, his parents forbade him from staying up all night and playing video games. But because Kenma was passionate about video games, he found a loophole and started to wake up at 2 AM every day to play. And Kenma not only did this with video games, but he also cared very much about his friends, and this is what led him to play volleyball. When Kuro got into volleyball, he naturally tried to get Kenma to play and join a team, and Kenma mainly agreed to play because of their friendship and because Kuro laid down a little flattery. Almost every day, Kuro would Kool-Aid man his way into Kenma's room, and together they would either practice volleyball or watch tapes of games. During these sessions, Kuro convinced Kenma to play the setter position by appealing to Kenma by saying it was only a position for masterminds and that he wouldn't have to move around a lot. And this flattery, alongside his friendship with Kuro, got Kenma to join his middle school team and eventually his high school team. However, in his high school team, Kenma faced some conflict. Initially, when Kenma joined the Nakoma high school team, he actually thought about quitting because he had a bad relationship with the third years. However, Kuro told him to stick with it because everyone else knew how good Kenma actually was, and with that and the return of a legendary coach, the situation in the team would get better. After hearing this, Kenma decided to stick around, and this is also where he met a person with complete ideological differences in Yamamoto. Yamamoto was a fellow first year alongside Kenma that both in personality and ideology completely differed from him. Yamamoto was extremely loud, passionate, and believed in doing everything with 1000% effort, while Kenma was more laid back, quiet, and didn't believe in wasting effort. Because of their opposing ideals, both Kenma and Yamamoto did not get along, and their differences led to arguments and jabs at each other, and when Kuro saw this, he tried to get Kenma to be a bigger person. Kuro advised Kenma to make more of an effort to be more friendly and get along, and in his awkward Kenma way, Kenma tried to follow Kuro's advice. One day, when Yamamoto did very poorly in a match and hit a bunch of serves out of bounds, Kenma remembered Kuro's advice and approached Yamamoto. Kenma then tried to give Yamamoto advice about serving better, but he didn't take this advice well, and the two started to argue. Their difference in ideologies really showed, where Kenma believed that instead of Yamamoto just being overzealous and doing everything with quote guts, that Yamamoto could instead focus on improving individual tangible things. Yamamoto did see what he was messing up on, but believed that the only way to overcome these issues was to have guts and go at it with maximum effort. Because of these differences, both ended up getting angrier and angrier, with Yamamoto even grabbing Kenma by the shirt and Kenma full on yelling at Yamamoto. As the situation looked like it was going to come to blows, one of their teammates threw cold water at both of them to calm them down. In the aftermath of the fight, they both held on to extreme tension, but as time went on and the more games they played together, that tension started to change to respect. For Yamamoto, as he watched Kenma play games, he started to realize that while Kenma wasn't as high effort and gutsy as him, Kenma was still an incredible competitor and a tactical genius. And for Kenma, as he watched Yamamoto, he realized how fierce of an attacker he was and how he fought hard for everything on the court. Because of this, both came to the conclusion that they were glad that each other were on the same team, and they grew in respect for each other. And with this incident, Kenma just gained another friend and even learned how to deal with future teammates that he had differences with. However, even after creating relationships because of volleyball, Kenma didn't love volleyball itself. While Kenma was able to make friends because of volleyball, he didn't love playing the game itself. Kenma didn't dislike or hate volleyball, but the main reason he played and competed was for his friend's sake. However, this started to change when Kenma met Hinata Shoyo. Hinata, unlike Kenma, was someone that from a young age absolutely loved volleyball and would do anything to get better and win. He was extroverted, energetic, and seemingly always positive, and when Kenma and Hinata first met, they quickly struck up a friendship. When Hinata first talked to Kenma, he actually asked Kenma if he enjoyed playing volleyball, and he responded that he was indifferent and played mostly for his friends, and this statement intrigued Hinata. Hinata loved volleyball and wanted people, whether they were teammates or opponents, to feel that same love. Kenma and Hinata were part of Nekoma and Karasuno respectively, and these schools had historically been rivals and their styles were polar opposite. Karasuno was a fast-paced offensive-heavy team, while Nekoma was a defensive-heavy grit and grind style team, and these conflicting styles showed up when they practiced against each other for the first time. In Karasuno, Hinata and Kageyama were known for an incredibly quick plan of attack, and this attack always caught other teams off guard. Nekoma was no exception to this, as they were surprised at the pure speed of Karasuno. However, Kenma and Nekoma started to quickly adapt. Kenma realized in order to stop the attack that Nekoma had to neutralize Hinata's movement, so he told one of the blockers to just focus on Hinata and chase him around. This actually ended up working, as the blocker was able to slow down and even block Hinata, and this plan and various other reads Kenma made allowed Nekoma to beat Karasuno in the set, which lit a fire under Hinata. After the matches were over, Hinata asked Kenma if the matches had been fun, but Kenma replied in indifference, and in response, Hinata vowed to show Kenma how fun volleyball could be. As time went on, both Karasuno and Nekoma were able to get to the national competition and slowly advance. Nekoma went against a team named Sarukawa, whose entire game plan was to win by tiring out Kenma. While initially this plan seemed to work, Kenma showed his ingenious and grit by still playing even though he was dead tired and creating a plan to counteract Sarukawa. Kenma made his team purposely make bad passes so that it would lure Sarukawa's blockers away and create openings for Nekoma's attackers to make points. And when Sarukawa started to realize Kenma had been out game planning them, they got into their own heads. Because of Kenma's effort and genius, Nekoma was able to overcome Sarukawa and they advanced to face their biggest challenge, Karasuno. For Kenma, the match between Karasuno and Nekoma was something that brought him excitement because it was finally a match that had no second chances. Even Kenma's coach noted that Kenma's demeanor felt different than other games, and he said that, quote, Kenma was trying to figure out how to clip a crow's wings. The set of matches were very intense as Karasuno used every offensive weapon available, and Kenma game planned in every possible way to limit Karasuno. Kenma would use head fakes, timing disruptions, mind games, and even single specific players to make it harder for Karasuno, and this back and forth kept going until the final game. However, even though the game was both mentally and physically taxing, Kenma didn't hate it, he actually started to really enjoy it. Through heated rally after rally, Kenma started to understand the enjoyment that volleyball could bring, and it all culminated where Kenma finally said that this game was just fun. From that point on, Kenma was having so much fun that he didn't want the game to end, but eventually there had to be a winner. And unfortunately for him, during game point, because of how intense the rally had been, the volleyball had been too slippery with sweat, and when Kenma tried to set the ball, it slipped through his hands, and Karasuno won. And while the loss was heartbreaking, Kenma didn't mope and was still joyful, saying that, quote, that the match had been the most fun he had ever had in his life.